Today I'm going to teach you step by step how to make this super easy summer door swag using the 5-gallon paint stir stick method. You'll find a full materials list for you below in the description of this video so that you can recreate this beauty. Of course, you'll also find a link to my Etsy shop if you'd rather just purchase today's design. Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Come on in. Let me just take a quick moment to welcome anyone new here to the channel. Stillwater's Wreath Designs is all about step-by-step DIY wreath and door swag tutorials. We've got new tutorials uploading every single week, so if you like that sort of thing, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and join us. Okay, let's dive in. I'm going to be making a flamingo summer-themed door swag on a 5-gallon paint stir stick for a dear friend of mine. So I thought I'd bring you along with me while I create this. Okay, the first thing we need to do is prep our 5-gallon paint stir stick, and you'll see that there's an indentation here towards the top. This will be the top of our swag. And so the first thing we're going to do is just take a pipe cleaner, and we're going to place that right there in that indentation fairly evenly. We're going to give this pipe cleaner 2 or 3 tight twists, and then we're going to overlap this pipe cleaner so that the circle is a couple of inches in length, and we're going to wrap this pipe cleaner around itself down both sides, and essentially this is going to turn into the door hanger so that we or our customers can easily hang this beauty on our front door. So it should look something like this. Let me zoom in here for you. And now you've got a perfect door hanger. This will be the back side of our swag, of course. So we're going to flip this guy over, and we're going to be using in total, including our hanging pipe cleaner, 9 pipe cleaners. You'll just want to grab pipe cleaners that are similar in color choices to your swag. And these are just standard 12-inch length. So we're going to come right underneath our door hanger pipe cleaner. We're going to keep these ends fairly even, and we're going to tie them, or twist them, I should say, 2 or 3 times tightly off to one side. We're going to grab another pipe cleaner and do the same exact thing. This time it will point to the other side. Now we're going to come to the bottom of our paint stir stick, about an inch or so above this bottom spot, and we're going to add 2 pipe cleaners at the bottom as well. Perfect. Now we're just going to eyeball the space between our top set of pipe cleaners and our bottom to find that middle. If you're more comfortable, you can certainly measure if that's easier for you. And we're going to add 2 more pipe cleaners right here in the middle. Okay, we've got 2 more pipe cleaners to add in. We're going to add 1 in between the top and the middle, and 1 in between the middle and the bottom. Again, just eyeballing to find that center. And this time our pipe cleaners are going to be pointed straight up. Okay, we've now got our paint stir stick fully loaded with our pipe cleaners. It should look something like this. I've got my hot glue gun plugged in and ready to go. And so now I'm just going to add a couple of stripes of glue right over those pipe cleaners to make sure that they don't slide around and they're nice and anchored down. Once you've got those dollops of glue added to all those pipe cleaners, go ahead and set your paint stir stick off to the side to dry, and we'll prep our deco mesh. We're going to use 3 different types of 10-inch deco mesh. This is going to be a flamingo themed door swag. So I've got a solid 10-inch white, a solid 10-inch hot pink with some metallic ribboning, and a lighter pink that's actually checkered. Let me show that to you. It's super stinking cute. And we're going to add 2 pieces of mesh to every single set of pipe cleaners or ties on our swag. Every single set of ties will get 1 white, and then we're going to alternate back and forth between the 2 shades of pink. So let's start by cutting the white mesh. You guys, you can use a ruler and a good pair of scissors if that's what you have handy. If you're new to wreath and swag making, I highly recommend that you invest in a self-healing mat. It's got all the measurements that you need, both horizontally and vertically. It also protects your work surface, and also a rotary cutter. The rotary cutter will allow you to cut your mesh quickly with nice clean lines. I'll leave links for those for you below. We're going to cut all of our deco mesh pieces at 20 inches in length. And so we're going to need 8 20-inch pieces of the white and 4 20-inch pieces of each of the 2 shades of hot pink. So go ahead and cut your deco mesh, and I'll meet you back here. You guys, I appreciate you all so much for being with me here on the channel. I'm actually going to do a giveaway today and send out some 5-gallon paint stir sticks to one of my subscribers. So please comment the word giveaway below for your chance to win. I'll draw that on Mother's Day. Okay, I've got all of my deco mesh pieces cut and ready to go. So I've grabbed my paint stir stick. That hot glue is nice and dry. I'm also going to grab a clothespin. You can also use a chip clip. That'll come in handy for this next step. And we are going to add 2 cruffles to every single set of ties on the entire stir stick swag. If you're new to wreath making, you will soon discover that deco mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as creators to help reduce that fray is always ideal. And the cruffle method is great for that. So remember, we're going to add 1 white cruffle to every single set of ties and 1 pink cruffle to every single set of ties. And we'll alternate back and forth between the bright pink and the light pink. So I've grabbed a piece of deco mesh. Just going to use this rotary cutter as a weight. I'm laying this down in my workstation curl side up, and on the end I'm going to curl that end in 2 or 3 times. And what that does is help tuck away that raw edge to reduce the fray. And then I'm just going to use my clip to hold that in place. I've spun my piece around. I'm going to do the same thing to the opposite end and curl that in a couple, 2 or 3 times. Then I'm going to take my thumbs and press down on that curl to hold it in place, and use my other 8 fingers to walk the mesh back into my hand until I reach the end. We'll release that clip. And we've just made our first cruffle. So what a cruffle really is, guys, is curls on the end, ruffle in the middle, hence the cruffle. We'll start at the lower level of our swag. I've just opened up a set of ties or pipe cleaners into a wide V. I'm going to take that cruffle and press it all the way down to the base. And then I'm going to give my pipe cleaners a couple of super tight twists to lock that guy in place. So that's cruffle number 1. Let's move on to the second cruffle. I've grabbed a piece of deco mesh. I'm going to lay it in my workstation curl side up. I'll curl in the end 2 or 3 times to tuck away that raw edge, and then secure it with my clip. We'll spin that guy around and do the same thing on the opposite end, curling that end in a couple of times. Then we'll scrunch and gather that mesh. Release our clip, pinch that in the middle. We're going to come back to the very same spot where we added our first cruffle, and we're going to add our next cruffle, and we want them to go in opposite directions, kind of like a plus sign. And we're going to add that all the way down to the base and give those pipe cleaners 2 or 3 tight twists. So we've just added our first 2 cruffles. We're going to follow this exact same method throughout the remaining sets of ties here on our paint stir stick. I'm always going to add the white cruffle first, and then I'll alternate back and forth between the dark and the light shades of pink until we've got all of our cruffles added in. Okay, I've got all of my deco mesh pieces loaded into the swag base, and you guys, look how full this beauty is. This is a good time for me to mention to you that not only does this make an excellent door swag, but it's also a great centerpiece or a fireplace mantle centerpiece. Super stinking cute. At this point, if you'd like some measurements, this guy is about 24 inches in length and probably 10 inches in depth at its deepest point. Let's move on to the next step, which is to make our bow. Okay, so let me show you the different ribbon types that we'll be using. Again, this is just a recipe, so certainly make it as you wish. I just recommend that whatever types of ribbon you use, as many or as few as you'd like, always use wired ribbon. It holds its shape better. So I've got a 2.5 inch flamingo and then 3 different 1.5 inch that I'll coordinate. You'll also need your scissors handy and a couple of pipe cleaners. So let's get our pipe cleaners prepped. And because this swag is so thick, we're going to need a little bit longer of a pipe cleaner. So we're going to marry 2 together to give us that longer pipe cleaner. So I'm just overlapping them into an X pattern near the top so that we've got about, 1.5 inches of each. And we're just going to twist them around one another. That way we've got a long enough pipe cleaner that we can tie our bow and anchor it into our swag. Perfect. So once you've created that longer pipe cleaner, just fold that into a loose V and set it off to the side. Okay, let's make our bow. I'm going to use a standard ruler here for measurement purposes. We're going to start out with an 8-inch tail, so I'm going to come out to the 8-inch mark, and guys, definitely not looking for perfection. I'm going to pinch that ribbon at the 8-inch mark. My left hand will be my holding hand, my right hand, my working hand. I'm going to give that a hard twist because we always want that to be pretty side out. We're going to measure another 8-inch strip, and then we'll pinch our ribbon. Once we fold this over, it's going to become a 4-inch loop. So I'm going to fold that over underneath my hand. We'll give it a hard twist, measure out another 8 inches, pinch our ribbon, fold that over under our thumb, measure out 8 inches, and we'll cut off our tail. All right, let's move on to the next ribbon choice. Now we're going to use our 1.5 inch leafy green. This time we're going to measure out a 6-inch tail. So I've measured out to 6 inches. I'm going to place that underneath my hand and give that ribbon a hard twist. We'll measure out to 6 inches again to give us a 3-inch loop. I'm pinching at that 6-inch mark and folding it underneath my thumb. We're going to do that same thing again. Folding underneath my thumb. We're going to make 4 loops of this. And guys, your bow's not going to be pretty at first. That's okay. We're going to build it first and fluff it second. We'll come out to that 6-inch mark again, fold that underneath our thumb, and we'll make a 6-inch tail and cut that guy off. We're going to move on to our hot pink polka dot ribbon. This will also be 6 and 6, so a 6-inch tail. Pinch that ribbon, place that in our holding hand, measure out to 6 inches for our 3-inch loop. Oops. Fold that underneath our hand. Give that ribbon a hard twist so that we've got that pretty side always out. And lastly, our 6-inch tail. Okay, we've got one more ribbon type, and that is this cutie patootie flamingo. So again, 6 inches, pinch that ribbon, Place that underneath our hand, give it a hard twist. And I'm just going to make a little bitty button loop is what I call it. We're going to measure out that tail at 6 inches and cut it off. Now we're going to keep that hand held tight. We're going to wrap this pipe cleaner all the way around this bow stack. Don't worry about messing it up. We're going to fluff this out. So around the center of those ribbons, and now I'm going to twist my pipe cleaners tight, tight, tight several times. Okay, so now we've got this hot mess of a bow, but don't worry guys, we're going to make it cute. Let's bring our swag back into our work area, and we're going to add this bow right to the middle of our swag. So now that I'm looking at this, I feel like we've got those colors coordinated a little bit too perfectly, and it's going to wash out the bow. So let me grab some black here. This is just a 3/4 inch Swiss polka dot. And I'm going to cut 2 strips at 15 inches to add to the back of our bow just to help it pop and not drown out. So what I'm going to do is just turn this into an X. We'll place that at the very underside of our bow here. And we'll take those pipe cleaners and twist them nicely around that Swiss polka dot. And that's going to help it pop once we fluff this bow out. Oh yes, that's definitely going to give it a lot more character. Okay, so when you're going to add this to the middle, it can be tricky to find, guys, because we've loaded it with so much deco mesh. So if you flip it over, you know that that middle set of 2 is basically the center of your door swag. And so I'm just going to take these ties that were on the side and make sure they're pointed towards the side, going away from the center. And then we're going to add this guy down in. So you're going to have to give yourself some grace and just weave this guy through. And then you'll just twist those ties together on the back side of your swag tightly so it's nice and secure. Okay, let's go ahead and fluff out our bow. I'm going to start at the bottom side of the bow to open up those loops and maneuver those tails so they're laying where I want them to. Once I'm happy with that, I'm going to grab my scissors and angle trim all the ends of my ribbon tails. And then I'm just going to run my fingers up and over those ribbons to give them a cute little curvy bump. So straight to the ceiling and back down. Okay, so now we need to make some ribbon tails to add into some of the other ties. So for the tails, we're just going to we'll use all the ribbons except for the 2.5 inch. We're going to use the black and white polka dot with the leaf on 2 sets of the ties. And then we'll use the polka dot, the pink polka dot, and the flamingo on 6 sets of the ties. So we're going to need 6 pieces of the polka dot and the flamingo and 2 pieces each of the black and white and the leaf. And we're going to measure those at 12 inches in length. So go ahead and cut your ribbon strips at 12 inches in length, angle trim your ends, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, I've got all of my ribbon tails cut and the ends are trimmed, so it's time to load our wreath. We're going to do the bottom half together and then we'll speed ahead for the top half. So on the bottom 2 sets of ties, we're going to use the pink and the flamingo combination. So we're going to just lay one ribbon right on top of the other. We'll fold that in half to identify the center. You're welcome to measure if that's your preference. We're going to pinch and pleat in the middle and then fold that into a loose V over our thumb. Then we're going to come into our set of ties or pipe cleaners. We're going to press that ribbon tail bundle all the way down to the base and then give those pipe cleaners 3 or 4 tight, tight twists. Then we'll trim off the excess bits of pipe cleaner. We'll just poke them back and out of the way and fluff out those tails. How stinking cute is that, you guys? Oh my goodness. You know, this is one of the ones that would be super cute on my door. Okay, let's do the same thing on the opposite side. We're going to layer one on top of the other. We'll fold those guys in half to find the center. We'll pinch and pleat in the middle. Fold it into a loose V over our thumb. Come over to the other side and open those pipe cleaners into a wide V. Place those tails all the way down to the base and give our pipe cleaners 2 or 3 tight twists. Then we're going to trim off those excess bits of pipe cleaners with our little snips here. We'll curl that tail out of the way, or that nub I should say, and we're going to fluff out those tails. Oh my goodness, you guys. So stinking cute. Okay, so we've got those tails added in. Now let's move to the middle section here. This time we're going to use our 1.5 leafy green with our black and white Swiss dot, layering them one on top of the other, folding it in half to find that middle, pinching and pleating. Then we're going to come to that center set of pipe cleaner ties. You'll have to kind of lift your bow up a little bit. Open those pipe cleaners into a wide V. Place that ribbon tail stack all the way down to the base. And, you guessed it, trim off those excess bits of pipe cleaners. Take your fingers and curl those guys under and out of the way. And then we're just going to fluff this into an X. Just a loose X underneath all the prettiness of our bow. How stinking cute, guys. All right, we're going to repeat this exact same thing on the top, and then I'll meet you back here. You guys, look how stinking cute this has come together. Oh my goodness. Okay, we've got just one more step. So our next step is to add just a little bit of greenery to really give the swag some pop and to tie in with our greenery ribbon. This bush actually comes from Hobby Lobby. Just a quick note on florals, guys. Quality definitely matters with florals. So I'm very picky about where I get them. I basically only get my florals from a couple of places, with Hobby Lobby definitely being the best quality in my opinion. I'm not sponsored by them. It's just truly what I think. But at any rate, this is just a long viney bush from Hobby Lobby. And as you can see, it's got like little fingerlings of greenery. And we're going to add one little fingerling of greenery in the center of every single set of our ribbon ties, and one little sprout right in the center of our bow. So I'm just going to cut off 9 of these pieces, and then we're going to hot glue them in. Let's do 2 together, and then we'll zoom ahead. So you're just going to take your greenery bit, whatever type you choose. You want that stem to be about 1/2 to 1/4 of an inch long. You're just going to run a little bit of glue right along that stem. You'll come into your swag and nestle that guy right down into the center of each set of ribbon tails. And we'll do the one in the center of the bow together here in just a moment. I'm just going to hold it for about 10 seconds to give it time to grab. And so with our bow, guys, I'm just going to nestle it right down in the middle. Just like that. All right, let's take a couple of minutes and add one greenery bit to the center of each of our ribbon tails, and I'll meet you back here.
Oh my goodness, this beauty is finished. Let's hang it on a door and see how it looks. How adorable did this turn out? I'm so happy with it, and I can't wait to gift my friend with our swag.
You guys, I am so excited to be making today's wreath. So let me just tell you real quickly that all the items that we're using today in the wreath came to me from TMI Gifts. And I've not even opened this box yet. So we're gonna check out all these goodies together. I'll make sure I put their website for you below in the description of this video so that you can check out all these goodies if you'd like to do so.
And here is the best part, guys. TMI Gifts is being very generous and giving everyone a 20% off total cart spend if you enter the code Nikki20 at the end of your checkout. That's NIKI20.
Thank you, TMI Gifts, for the goodies that we're about to unveil. I haven't even cut the tape yet, guys. I wanted to open this with you together. So exciting. You guys, this is so much fun. Let's see what we will be designing with today. We've got some super cute lemon branches. Looks like there are 2 of those. We've got some ribbon. Both of these are 2.5 inches wide. Adorable. We've got a 24-inch pine wreath base that's dual layered.
We've got this adorable 1.5 inch wide ribbon with a black background full of lemons.
Oh my gosh, you guys. How stinking cute is this foam glitter lemon? I don't know if you've been checking out all the wreath making supply websites, but these extra large foam wreath attachments are definitely the trend this summer. That is too stinking adorable. This guy is 21 inches long and probably about 15 inches or so wide and covered in glitter. We've got a couple more rolls of ribbon that's really pretty, like an olive green 1.5 inch and a Swiss black and white polka dot, also 1.5 inch. And we've got this super cute gift package from TMI Gifts. How adorable is that? Let's see what's in there. Just a really lovely thank you card for partnering with them. And just a photo of the TMI family. Thank you so much. We've also got a black and white polka dot 10-inch roll of deco mesh.
Okay, let's dive into our design. The first thing we need to do is fluff out our pine wreath base. We're just going to stand all of these pine ties to attention and spread them out from side to side and towards the top so that we can begin to add our deco mesh in. This is a 24-inch pine base. Okay, the next step in the process is to prepare our deco mesh. This is a 10-inch wide roll, and what we're going to do here is cut the entire roll in pieces that are approximately 20 to 24 inches in length. And you guys, I really don't measure it. I literally put my roll in front of me, unroll it so that my arm is at a 90-degree angle, and I cut. So I'm going to follow this process until I've cut my entire roll of deco mesh, and then I'll meet you back here. Now that our mesh is cut, go ahead and grab your pine base.
So to make a cruffle, you're going to take your piece of deco mesh, and if you're new to working with deco mesh, guys, deco mesh loves to fray. So anything that we can do as creators to help reduce that fray is always ideal. And so I take a single piece of mesh, I lay it right on top of my wreath or in my work area, curl side up. I'm going to roll those ends in 2 or 3 times, just to tuck away those raw edges to reduce that fray, and then scrunch and gather in the middle to create this cruffle. And what a cruffle really is 2 curls, 1 on each end, and then a ruffle in the middle. And we're going to add cruffles all the way around our wreath base. And so I like to start in the middle, in the center of the wreath, and I'm going to find 2 neighboring pine ties. We'll open them into a V, place that cruffle all the way down to the base, and then give those pine ties a couple of tight twists. And that's going to anchor your cruffle in. Let's do one more together. We're going to roll those ends in a couple of times to tuck away that raw edge, and then just scrunch and gather in the middle to create our cruffle. So we've started in the center, and what I like to do to keep it nice and full is add a cruffle in the center, on the outside, and then the inside. Center, outside, and inside, all the way around the wreath base. So you'll find 2 neighboring pine ties, Open them into a wide V, place your cruffle all the way down to the base, and give those ties a couple of tight twists. So go ahead and add cruffles throughout your entire wreath base, making sure you cover the center, the outside, and the inside. You could add as many or as few as you wish, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, we've got our wreath base fully loaded with our cruffles. I ended up using 17 pieces, which turned out to be the entire single roll of 10-inch deco mesh, and just look how full this beauty is coming along. So at this point, this wreath is about 26 inches in diameter and probably 8 or so inches in depth. Let's set our wreath base off to the side and cut some ribbon tails. We're going to add in 2 sets of ribbon tails for each bundle, and I'd like to start out with 14 ribbon tail bundles in total. So since we've got 2 groupings here, we're going to need 7 cuts of each of the ribbon types. And we're going to cut the 2.5 inch wide ribbon at 12 inches in length. So let me show you an easy way to cut your ribbon tails, guys. Just identify your 12-inch mark. Mark that with your finger, and then fold that ribbon accordion style the total number of times for the pieces that you need. So in this case, we're going to need 7 of each. Once you've got that folded the total number of times that you need, cut off that excess ribbon. And then you can either dovetail your ends or angle cut. I'm going to angle cut today. And I'm going to cut the whole stack at once, which means that my angles will vary amongst the strips here. So if you want them to go in the same direction, cut them apart individually. So what we've done here, guys, let me show you the beauty of this trick, is we've just measured all of our ribbon pieces at once, trim those ends at once, and this batch of ribbon tails is good to go. So we're going to cut 7 pieces of all the ribbon types. Your 2.5 inch ribbon will be cutting at 12 inches in length, and your 1.5 inch ribbon you'll be cutting at 10 inches in length, and I'll meet you back here. Okay, I've got all of our ribbon tail strips cut, the ends are trimmed, and it's time to start loading our ribbon tail bunches into our wreath. So we'll set these guys off to the side and grab that wreath base. So remember, we're going to add 2 tails per each grouping, 1 2.5 inch piece and 1 1.5 inch piece. You're just going to lay that 1.5 inch strip right on top of that 2.5 inch strip. You can fold it in half to identify that center point. Open it back up, pinch and pleat in the middle. And then I just fold it into a loose V over my thumb, like so. And we're going to come into our wreath and add this bundle in. So again, find any pair of neighboring pine ties, grab that ribbon tail bundle, and place it right down to the base of those 2 pine ties and give them a couple of tight twists. And you've just added your first set of ribbon tails. So I kind of fluff them out as I go, and by fluff, guys, all I'm really doing is maintaining that V shape and pulling them away from the center of the wreath. And I'm going to go back and forth between the 2 ribbon combinations and stagger them at various depths. So we'll move on to our second combination and do one more set together, and then we'll speed ahead. So I've grabbed a 2.5 inch ribbon tail strip and a 1.5 inch ribbon tail strip. I'm going to lay that 1.5 inch strip right on top of the 2.5 inch piece and center it. We'll fold that in half to find the center of our ribbon stack. Open it back up, and then that line is your center point. And guys, nobody's going to be measuring your ribbon tails, so they certainly, don't need to be perfect. I've pinched and pleated in the middle, and I'm folding them into a loose V over my thumb. And we're going to come about 4 inches away from where we just added it, and I'm going to come closer towards the outside. I'll find 2 neighboring pine ties, place that ribbon tail bundle all the way down to the base and give it a couple of tight twists and fluff out my tails. So we're going to repeat this pattern all the way around our wreath base. You can add as many or as few ribbon tail bundles as you wish, and then I'll meet you back here.
Let me just also mention real quickly that I'd like for you to leave a blank space about the size of your hand on the upper level of your wreath base. We'll be skipping that part for the ribbon tails because we'll be adding a bougie bow.
You guys, oh my goodness, look how stinking cute this is coming together. So if you can see, I've actually left the blank space about a hand's width on the upper level, and that's where we're going to add a bougie bow. Okay guys, so I want to add my bow here, which is approximately 10 o'clock if you were looking at this as if it were a clock. But first, we're going to add our giant foam lemon. Let me just cut our tag off here.
I flipped over our foam lemon slice, and as you can see, it's got this really handy metal hanger, and I've grabbed a 20 gauge floral wire stem. I'm going to run that floral wire stem through that metal anchor so that we can anchor our lemon slice into the wreath. Now we'll center the lemon slice where we'd like it on our wreath, poke those floral wire stems right through the wreath base, and then tie them securely on the back. Once we've got those anchored down, I'm trimming off the excess bits of floral wire stem with my small snips, and I'm grabbing my needle nose pliers to curl those poking ends under. Now I'm just going to add a pea-sized amount of hot glue right on top of those wire stems so that they don't poke anyone or our customer's door, and we'll be good to go. Now that the glue is dried, we're going to flip our wreath over. Now this part seems a little crazy. Trust the process here, friends. We're going to lift up that foam lemon slice, grab our hot glue gun, and add several full squirts of hot glue to the back side of our foam lemon slice, and then press that slice down onto the wreath so it can really anchor down. I'm going to add something heavy on top of the lemon slice to really give it some weight to help it anchor down. Okay, let's set our wreath off to the side and make our bow.
We'll be using the same ribbon that we used for our ribbon tails to make our hand bow. And you guys, hand bows was one of the trickiest things for me to learn when I first started making wreaths. So I'll leave a couple of step-by-step, slow motion bow making tutorials for you below in the description of this video in case you need some extra support while you're making your bow. So you're just going to need your choice of ribbon. You can use as many or as few as you like. I just recommend that you use varying widths. It doesn't matter how many you choose, just make sure that all of your ribbon are wired. You're also going to need a good pair of scissors and a standard pipe cleaner. I like to fold my pipe cleaner into a loose V and set it off to the side so that it's ready when it's time to anchor down our bow. You guys, there is a million different ways to make bows. Everybody's got their own style and method. I hope that you find this tutorial helpful. So when I'm making hand bows, I always make my tails a little bit longer than what I anticipate I'll need, because you can always trim your ribbon down, but you can't add more ribbon in. So I've got a 12-inch tail. I'm going to pinch and gather to make a little pleat. My left hand will be my holding hand and my right hand my working hand. I'm then going to measure out another 10-inch piece and pinch and pleat, because that will give us a 5-inch bow. So I've measured 10 inches. I'm folding it in half underneath my fingers. And so now I've got this 5-inch loop. I'm going to twist that because we always want that to be pretty side out. I'm going to measure 10 inches again. We're going to pinch and pleat at that 10-inch mark. Fold that over. Give it a hard twist so it's pretty side out. And measure our 12-inch tail and cut that ribbon loose. So we've got 2 tails at 12 inches in length and 2 loops that are 5-inch loops. I'm going to do the same thing with a 1.5-inch black and white polka dot. So I've got a 12-inch tail. I'm pinching, laying that underneath my thumb. I'm going to give that a hard twist. We're going to measure out 10 inches. Give that a pinch. Fold that in to give us that 5-inch loop. Give it a hard twist. Measure out 10 inches again to give us that 5-inch loop. And guys, nobody's going to be measuring your loops and tails, I promise. So if it's not perfect, it's okay. And another 12-inch tail. And we'll cut that ribbon off. We're going to move on to the 2.5-inch lemon. And you guessed it, another 12-inch tail. So I'm giving that a pinch, laying that right on top of that black and white polka dot, giving it a hard twist under my thumb. I'm going to measure out to the 10-inch mark, which will give us our 5-inch loop. And it's pinched and pleated and folded over. We're going to give that a hard twist again. We'll measure out to 10 inches, pinch and pleat, fold that guy over. So we've just made another 5-inch loop. And we'll measure out a 12-inch tail, cut a ribbon off. And we're going to use our 1.5-inch olive green. And we're going to make a 12-inch tail again. Give that a pinch, lay that underneath our thumb, give it a hard twist. And at this point, guys, I'm just going to use my previous loops to measure, and I'm going to make them about 1/2 inch shorter than the first 3 ribbon loops that we've made. You can marry them together to make sure that they meet at the same spot, which tells you that your loops are the same length. And we'll cut off our 12-inch tail. Onto our 1.5-inch lemon. We'll find our 12-inch spot for that tail, give it a pinch. We'll lay that on top of our bow stack, give it a hard twist so that pretty side's always out. We'll fold that over. We want that loop to be basically the same length or a tad shorter than the green. Give it a hard twist. Make that loop. Gather it in your hand. Measure out a 12-inch tail and cut that ribbon off. And we're going to do one more of the black and white polka dot. This time I'm going to do a 10-inch tail. Give it a pinch. We're going to make those loops about 3 inches in length. And I'm just going to marry them up to make sure they're the same length, and they are. Another 10-inch tail. So now we've got a ribbon stack for our bow. It's not pretty yet. We're going to take that pipe cleaner and wrap that right around this bow stack. Bring it around to the back side. And we are going to tie this as tight as we can. Tight, tight, tight. And give it 2 or 3 tight spins or twists. Once you've done that, you can trim off the excess bit of your pipe cleaner tails. And then just lay that little tail down flat. And I don't like to fluff out my bows until they're in my wreath. So let's go ahead and grab our wreath. That glue on our lemon slice should be secure. We can remove our weight. And we're going to add our bow at that 10 o'clock spot right here. So what I want you to do is find 2 neighboring pine ties. And then we're going to lay this ribbon stack right down in the center of our ties and twist those guys together. So now we've got a not so cute bow stack on our wreath. This is going to look upside down while I fluff for a few minutes here, guys. And I like to start from the bottom. So when it comes to fluffing your bows, It's not the fun thing to do, at least not for most people. And it takes a little while, so give yourself some grace. We're not going to trim our tails or do anything with those yet. We want to see where they're going to lay. We're just going to take some time to fluff.
I always form my bottom loops into an X pattern and work my way towards the top, fluffing as I go. There's no right or wrong way to fluff.
Once you've got those loops in the general direction of where you'd like to see them, go ahead and angle trim or dovetail all of your ribbon tail ends. I like to do so at varying lengths. All right, let's spin this around and see how this is looking at our rough fluff. Super cute. So I'm going to run my fingers over these tails and make sure that they're going in the direction that I want them to go. I can already see that we're going to need to do a little bit of a trim. That's okay. So stinking cute, you guys. Oh my goodness. What a fun summer wreath. I'm going to try to angle trim some of these longer ones here. A little bit more of a haircut. All right, once you've got those tails trimmed, I'm just going to curl them a little bit, give them a bump by running them through my fingers and pulling them towards the ceiling, which gives them this cute little curve. That bow looks fabulous, and so we're on to our very last step. Okay, so the last step is to add in some lemon floral picks. Each one of these bushes has 4 stems, so I'm going to use my heavy-duty cutters and trim each one off of the bush so that we can sprinkle them throughout our wreath. So remember, this is on a wire spine, so you can bend it and shape it as you wish. I like to dry place my florals first, so I'm just going to go around the perimeter of my wreath and scatter in each stem, and then I'm going to come back through and hot glue them in. All right, I've just trimmed down one of the 2 stems. I feel like we're just going to frame our bow area here because of the size of our foam lemon slice. So I've got my pieces sprinkled, and we're just going to anchor them down with some hot glue. So we're going to run a bead of hot glue right along the stem, about 1.5 inches or so, and then nestle that guy down in, just like so.
And this beauty is finished. Be sure to go to tmigifts.com and enter the code Nikki20 to get 20% off your supplies order.
We'll be building today's wreath on a 15-inch wire work wreath form. The work wreath form looks just as you see it here. It comes to you just like this. There are 2 levels, the lower and the upper, and there are a total of 18 ties on this work wreath form. And the first thing we're going to do is take these lower level ties and point them outwards so that our wreath frame looks like a sunshine. We'll be using the Deco Mesh Poof and Double Curl method today. So we'll be starting out with a 10-inch roll of white Deco Mesh. If you're new to wreath making, Deco Mesh loves to fray, so anything that we can do as creators to help reduce that fray is always ideal. And the Poof and Curl method is great for that. We're going to take our roll of Deco Mesh and unroll about 18 inches or so. And I always like to start at the lower level. So the first thing we need to do is lay our Deco Mesh down in front of us. We're going to take our hands at the end of this roll here and then just scrunch and gather that mesh back into our hands. Then you're going to have a little tail here that's a couple of inches in length. Just fold that guy under. What that does is tuck away that raw edge to prevent the fray. And then you're going to come to any set of ties on your lower level. At this point, we don't have a top or bottom to our wreath. You're going to open those ties into a wide V, and then take this deco mesh tail that we've just made, press that all the way down to the base of the V, and then give those ties a couple of tight twists to anchor that mesh down, and then I just pointed those ties outwards. So now that we're anchored down, we can start by adding our first poof. So if you've got a self-healing mat, as you see in the background here, you can use that for your measurements. Otherwise, just use a standard 12-inch ruler. And what we're going to do is right at the set of ties that we've most recently used, we're going to come out to the 10-inch mark on our deco mesh. Once you've identified that 10-inch mark, just go ahead and scrunch and gather your mesh like so to create this poof. Then we're going to come to the next set of ties on that lower level, open them into a wide V, place our pinch of deco mesh all the way down to the base, and give our ties a couple of tight twists. And we've just created our first poof. Now, if you're using a ruler, all you're going to do is place your ruler at the base of your most recent set of ties, come out to that 10-inch mark, and guys, we're not looking for perfection here. No one's going to be measuring. And scrunch and gather. Let's do one more together and then we'll speed ahead. So I'm placing my last set of ties that I've anchored down to on my measuring spot. I'm going to come out to the 10-inch mark, scrunch and gather my mesh. I'm going to pinch that between my fingers. We'll go to the very next set of ties on that lower level. We're going to place that deco mesh all the way down to the base of those ties and give them a couple of tight twists. So we've just added our second poof. Go ahead and repeat the same process all the way around the lower level of your wreath, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay guys, we're getting ready to add our last lower level poof. So I wanted to do this poof with you. Again, we're going to measure out to that 10-inch mark. Scrunch and gather that mesh into our hand to create that poof. And we're going to add this last poof right on top of where we anchored it down. So I'm going to spread those ties into a wide V, take that pinch of mesh, place it all the way down to the base, right on top of where we anchored down, and give my ties a couple of tight twists. We've just added our last lower level poof. And so now we're going to repeat the same process on the upper level. First, we need to jump our deco mesh from the lower level to the upper level. And so all we're going to do is roll out a bit of our mesh. We're going to pull that cleanly and tautly in our hand. We're not making a poof. We're going to come to that first set of ties on the upper level, open them into a wide V, bring that mesh behind those ties, place the mesh all the way down to the base of that V, and you guessed it, give it a couple of tight twists. So let me zoom in here. As you can see, we've just jumped our mesh from the lower level to the upper level. There's no poof, it's just a clean, tight jump. We've anchored it down into the ties, and now we can repeat that same poof method on the upper level. The only difference is instead of 10-inch poofs, we'll be making 8-inch poofs. We want those poofs to recede in just a little bit so that the lower level of our wreath can really shine. So we'll do one together, and then we'll speed ahead. We're going to take those ties and place them on our marker of our self-healing mat or your ruler, whatever you're using. We're going to come out to that 8-inch mark. We're going to scrunch and gather that mesh just like we did on the lower level to create an 8-inch poof. Let me roll that out a little bit. We'll come to the very next set of ties on that upper level, open them into a wide V. We'll place our mesh all the way down to the base of that V and give those ties a couple of tight twists. We've just made our first 8-inch poof on the upper level. So go ahead and repeat this process all the way around on your upper level, and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, we're getting ready to add our last poof on the upper level. And so we're going to add that right on top of where we made that deco mesh jump earlier. So we're just going to spread those ties into a wide V, take our 8-inch poof at the pinch, place it all the way down to the base of those ties, and give them 2 or 3 tight twists to really anchor our deco mesh down. Now that we've finished adding all of our poofs onto the wreath base, it's time to cut away the remainder of our mesh. So what I want you to do here is grab a good pair of scissors and have those handy. You're going to come into that roll of mesh. I always place my hand behind the mesh, kind of as a guard, to make sure I don't actually cut poof I'm not supposed to. I'm going to come up a couple of inches here from where we've anchored down that last poof, and I'm just going to cut that mesh away. Just like that. So now that we've finished adding all of the poofs into our wreath base, it's got some pretty good coverage, but as you can see, it's still pretty light and airy. We can still see our frame through there, which we don't want to do. So it's time to add the second layer of deco mesh into our wreath base, which is the curls. Now remember, I mentioned earlier there are 18 sets of ties in total on our wreath base. Let's set this off to the side. Let me just show you our sign again here, friends. So we're going to be using this Hello Summer sign, and we really want some bright summer colors. And so I've grabbed 4 rolls of 10-inch deco mesh, this pretty hot pink with some nice edging, a bright yellow, this teal, and a purple. And we need to cut 9 pieces of each of the rolls at 10 inches in length for our curls. So again, you can use your scissors and a ruler if that's what you have handy. If you don't yet have a self-healing mat and a rotary cutter, I would definitely recommend that both of these items be some of the first tools that you add to your wreath making toolkit.
The self-healing mat measures 36 inches by 24 inches. It protects your work area and gives you all the measurements that you need. And then the rotary cutter works kind of like a pizza cutter, and it's going to cut all of your mesh quickly with nice clean lines. I'll leave links below in the description of this video for both of my faves.
And so all we're going to do to make these next pieces, let me cut this and get a clean line here, guys. You're just going to roll out your mesh, and you're going to cut 10-inch pieces. So for all 4 of our colors of mesh that we're utilizing, we're going to cut 9 pieces of each at 10 inches in length, and then I'll meet you back here. All right, once you've got all of those curls cut, you should have a nice little mountain of deco mesh pieces in your work area. So go ahead and grab that wreath base, and we're going to go ahead and begin adding all of our curls into the base. I would recommend that you grab a chip clip or a clothespin. I just grabbed this in a pack of 10 from the Dollar Tree. It'll really help you with this next step. So remember, we've got 18 sets of ties in our entire wreath base, and we're going to add 2 curls to every single set of ties. We've got 4 colors here. I'll be pairing up the yellow and the pink as one grouping, and the teal and the purple as another grouping, and I'm just going to go back and forth with those color combinations in a pattern. Let's do 2 sets of curls together. You're going to take your first piece of deco mesh, lay that in your work area, curl side up, and you're just going to roll that piece of deco mesh into a cylindrical tube. Just like that. So it's probably 1.25 inches or so in diameter there in the middle, and then of course it flares out at the ends. Once you roll that up into your curl, take your clip and just pinch that guy right in the middle. Set it off to the side, and then grab your second piece of deco mesh. Again, lay it in your workstation, curl side up. Roll that piece of mesh into a cylindrical tube, just like that. And then we'll grab that first curl that we made, and we're just going to lay one on top of the other into a loose X. And we're going to come to any set of ties on our wreath base, open up those ties into a wide V, take that deco mesh X and lay it all the way down to the base of the V, and give those ties a couple of tight twists. So it kind of looks like an X. Let's do one more set together and then we'll speed ahead. So we'll move on to that second color combination. I've just grabbed my piece of purple deco mesh. I've laid it in my workstation curl side up, and I'm just rolling my mesh into a tube or a curl. Then I'm going to pinch that guy in the middle with my clip. I'll grab my second piece of deco mesh. It's laying in my workstation curl side up, rolling this piece of mesh into a cylindrical tube. And then we'll grab that first piece. We'll lay one on top of the other into a loose X pattern. I'm going to come to my very next set of ties, open them into a wide V, place that deco mesh X all the way to the base, and give those ties a couple of tight twists. We're going to repeat the same pattern, adding 2 curls to every single set of ties in our entire wreath base, and I'll meet you back here. Now that we've got all of our curls added into our wreath, look at what a game changer this wreath has become. It's such a beautiful pop of color. It's about 24 inches in diameter at this point and probably 8 or so inches thick. And so the next step is to add our decorative sign. Friends, if you ordered a wreath kit from me, then your sign's going to come to you just like this with pre-drilled holes so that you can anchor this guy directly into your wreath. If you're using your own sign and your sign is wood or pressed cardboard, go ahead and drill a couple of anchoring holes in, or you can use mounting brackets. I'll leave a link for those as well. And what we're going to do is basically, again, our wreath has no top or bottom at this point. And so we're just going to anchor this down using some upper level ties. Just starting here on the left. And you want to press it in about 1/4 of the way. So you want it to be nice and sturdy, but you don't want it to be so tightly anchored that it sinks down into your wreath. You're going to want to skip 3 sets of ties once you anchor it. So 1, 2, 3, and then on that 4th set, go ahead and anchor down. That will ensure that you've got your sign centered. And then what I like to do is just take my hands and pull up any of those curls that have gotten tucked away as we've anchored our sign down. We don't want them to disappear behind our wreath. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, let's set this off to the side and we're going to cut our ribbon. We're going to use 4 different ribbon types today that match our sign. I've got 2 2.5 inch wide ribbons and 2 1.5 inch wide ribbons. It doesn't matter how many or how few you choose, just make sure that your ribbon is wired. And when we add our ribbon tails in, guys, we're going to add 2 tails to every single set of ties. So we're going to need 9 pieces of each of our ribbon for our wreath. Let me show you an easy way to cut your ribbon strips all at once. We're going to cut these strips at 11 inches in length. So I'm just measuring this out on my self-healing mat, or you can use a ruler. I've identified that 11-inch mark and I'm just pinching that with my finger. And then I'm going to fold this ribbon over onto itself, accordion style, until we have 9 pieces. So there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Once you've got those 9 pieces folded, you're going to cut off the remaining bit of your ribbon roll. And then I'm going to trim my ends at an angle. You can dovetail if you prefer. I'm going to lift up 2 sections of my ribbon here. I'm going to grab my scissors and come down about 1 inch on the side and then cut up diagonally to that corner, just like that. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other half of my ribbon stack. We're going to keep that stack together, turn it around on the other side, and do that same thing. And so essentially what we've done here, friends, is measure all of our pieces out at the same length and trim our ends all in just a couple of quick steps. And so we've got our 9 pieces measured at 11 inches in length. Our ends are trimmed, and we're going to follow that same process with the other 3 ribbon types, and then I'll meet you back here. Now that we have all of our ribbon strips cut and ready to go, we'll sit those off to the side and grab our wreath base. You'll also want to grab a small pair of snips. I'll leave a link for my favorite pair for you below in the description of this video. And we're on to our last step, guys. We're going to add our 2 ribbon tails to every single set of ties throughout the entire wreath base. We'll do a couple together and then we'll speed ahead. So I'm going to grab my 2.5 inch strip and my 1.5 inch strip. I'm going to lay them one on top of the other, fold them in half to identify that center point. Then I'm going to pinch and pleat right there in the middle. Fold it into a loose V over my thumb. I'm going to come to the ties that we've used to anchor down our sign and place those ribbon tails all the way down to the base. Give those ties a couple of tight twists and then curl them down under. Then I like to take those ribbon tails and just pull them away from the center of our wreath into a loose V like that. And then I'm going to do the same ribbon combination on the opposite side. So I've laid my 1.5 inch ribbon on top of the 2.5 inch ribbon. I'm folding that ribbon bundle in half to find that center point. I'm going to pinch and pleat in the middle so it looks like a men's bow tie. I'll pull them into a loose V over my thumb and come into my ties on the opposite side of my sign. Place my ribbon stack all the way down to the base and give those ties a tight twist and curl them under. Then we'll fluff out those tails and pull them away from the center of our wreath. So remember I mentioned earlier I like to go every other with my ribbon pairings. And so now I'll grab my second ribbon combination and lay my 1.5 inch ribbon right on top of the 2.5 inch ribbon. Fold that ribbon stack in half to find the middle. Pinch and pleat. Fold that into a loose V over my thumb and come to my next set of ties. I've opened them into a wide V. I'm going to place that ribbon tail stack all the way down to the base. I'm going to give those ties 2 or 3 tight twists, and then I'm going to use my small snips and trim off those excess bits of ties because we don't need them anymore. I'm going to take my fingers and just kind of curl them back and out of the way and fluff out those ribbon tails just like that.
Let's continue adding our ribbon tails into our wreath, making sure that we trim off the ends of those ties once we're finished and fluff out those tails. And this beauty is finished. Okay, let's move on to the next. The materials and supplies that we'll be using today will be an 18-inch grapevine wreath base, your florals and greenery of choice, a good pair of snips, and your hot glue gun. The first thing we need to do is take a few minutes, grab our snips, and trim all of the loose pieces off of our grapevine. Be sure to trim the front and the back side. When I took a look on Etsy to see what was trending for this summer's wreaths, I can tell you that there were very few deco mesh wreaths, and basically everything that had the best seller label was floral-based wreaths built on a grapevine base.
So today we'll be using some fuchsia, bright pinks, some tangerines and oranges, lots of greenery, and a little bit of wildflowers. I grabbed all of my florals from Hobby Lobby. You guys, quality really matters, so make sure that you're getting a high quality floral for your wreath. Go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun, and the first thing we're going to do is trim our greenery bushes. I've grabbed both my large and my small snips so that I'm ready to cut down my floral bushes. And what we're going to do is open up the bush and trim off every single stem from the entire bush. We'll be adding greenery into the wreath first. When you're trimming your greenery, you basically want to cut your stem off about 2 inches below where the greenery ends. That's the end that's going to be anchored down into the wreath, and you don't want it too long so that it doesn't stick out the back. Let me just take a quick moment to set aside my greenery and show you my hot glue gun. This is a Gorilla glue gun. Really, guys, the glue gun itself doesn't matter. The most important part is that you use a good quality glue stick so that your pieces don't come undone. Okay, let's dry place our greenery into our wreath. This is an 18-inch round grapevine wreath, and what we're going to do is take those greenery pieces and anchor them into the wreath at an angle about a hand's width apart all the way around the entire wreath. We do have one stem left. We'll hold that off to the side and trim that down for some filler pieces once we've completed our wreath. Okay, now it's time to anchor down those greenery bits. I'm just going to pull them out one by one, run a bead of glue along that stem, and place the greenery piece right back into the wreath. Okay, let's get some beautiful color into this wreath. So I've grabbed my floral bush. This again is from Hobby Lobby. And as you can see, there's some purples in there, but we're only going to be using the pinks and the oranges. So we're going to grab our cutters and trim out all of the pink and orange stems from our bush. Now, most times when you grab a floral bush, the greenery bits will slide up and down. So I typically slide those greenery pieces up where I want them to land, and then I trim off my floral pieces one by one about 2 inches below where the greenery ends. Now that I have my florals all trimmed down, I'm going to go ahead and sort them out by color. But let me give you a little pro tip here, guys. Typically, when I'm working with florals, I always like to tug on the top of that flower just to make sure it's securely attached to the stem. If it's not, just use your hot glue gun to reattach it firmly so that it doesn't fall off. Okay, let's go ahead and trim down our hot pink flowers. Okay, let's get our florals added in. I've got twice as many pink as I do orange, so I'll be following a 2-to-1 pattern. Make sure when you add your florals in that you're going both on the inside, the top, and the outside of your wreath for a nice full coverage. We're going to dry place them just as we did earlier, and then we'll come back through with our hot glue gun to anchor them down. Here's a little pro tip for you. Consider all of the spaces between your greenery as sections. That way you can repeat the same pattern all the way around your wreath. I'd like to add a little bit of neutral cream colors into the wreath just to really neutralize it. And so I'm going to trim out those few cream stems from our bush and add them in. Those cream color stems were just what this wreath needed. Okay, let's glue them in. Oh my goodness, you guys, this wreath is turning out so beautifully. All right, we've got one more step. Let's grab a few greenery bushes, trim them down. We're literally taking all of those individual bits and trimming them right off the stem. And we'll work our way around the wreath, and any place that needs a little bit of filler, we'll anchor them in. And this beauty is finished. It is so full of lovely florals and greenery. What a showstopper. It's about 24 inches in diameter and probably about 7 or so inches in depth. Perfect for your front door summer decor. Thank you for spending time creating this with me today, friends. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps my little channel to grow. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Happy crafting.